Ever wondered how a Supreme Court ruling can impact a former president's political future? Well, let's dive into a recent example. We're talking about the Supreme Court's refusal to block the release of certain White House documents linked to former President Trump. These documents, some 700 in total, were requested by the House January 6th Committee, a group dedicated to uncovering the truth about the events surrounding the Capitol attack. Now, you might be asking, why is this ruling so significant? Well, it's a bit of a game of documents. These papers could provide insights into Trump's actions and decisions during the insurrection and his attempts to obstruct the investigation. So, by allowing the committee access to these documents, the Supreme Court has essentially enabled the committee to delve deeper into the events of that day. But what does this mean for Trump and the broader political landscape? It's important to note that this decision is seen as a defeat for Trump's legal strategy to delay the investigation. While it might not drastically alter the political landscape, it certainly sends a clear signal about the committee's legitimacy and the urgency of their work. Remember, this is not just about one person or one event. It's about our collective understanding of what happened on January 6th and ensuring that the truth comes to light. It's about holding those responsible accountable and learning from our past to secure our future. This ruling, while not altering the political landscape dramatically, certainly underscores the legitimacy and urgency of the committee's investigation. How does a state law become unconstitutional? Let's delve into the story of the Colorado law. Now, this law wasn't just any ordinary law, it was a law that had significant political implications. But before we get into the specifics, let's talk a little about how a state law can be declared unconstitutional. You see, in our country we have something called the Constitution, which is the ultimate rule book. It's like the big boss of all laws. Now, when a state law is created, it must align with what's written in this big rule book. If it doesn't, well, that's where we run into problems. The process to declare a law unconstitutional involves a lot of legal wrangling. It's like a chess game, but instead of moving pawns and knights, attorneys are presenting arguments and counter-arguments. And the playing field, that's the court system. In a nutshell, someone has to challenge the law in court, arguing that it violates the Constitution. This person is often someone who is directly affected by the law. The case then makes its way through the lower courts, and depending on the significance of the issue, can end up in the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. The Supreme Court then examines the law and the arguments presented, weighing them against the principles set out in the Constitution. If a majority of the justices decide that the law indeed violates the Constitution, then the law is struck down and declared unconstitutional. Now, back to the Colorado law. Without getting into too much detail, this law was challenged in court because it was believed to contravene the Constitution. And after a series of legal battles, the Supreme Court made a landmark decision, declaring it unconstitutional. So, the journey from a law's inception to its potential unconstitutionality is quite a complex one, isn't it? So, how do the Supreme Court's rulings and state laws interact, and why does this matter? We often think of the Supreme Court as the ultimate authority, but it's not always that straightforward. You see, Supreme Court rulings can influence state laws, and state laws can also impact the decisions of the Supreme Court. It's a two-way street. For instance, when the Supreme Court makes a ruling on a controversial issue, states can respond by crafting new laws that push the boundaries of that ruling. On the flip side, state laws on novel or contentious issues can end up in the Supreme Court, challenging the justices to interpret the Constitution in new ways. This interplay is vital for the functioning of the US legal system. It ensures a dynamic conversation between federal and state authority, pushing our understanding of constitutional law forward. It's a delicate dance of checks and balances that keeps our democracy robust and responsive to the changing needs of society. As we can see, the Supreme Court's rulings and state laws are two sides of the same coin in our legal system, each influencing and being influenced by the other.